Hey, what's up everyone? Mecha here, back with another Fire Emblem archetype tier list, and today, as you probably noticed, we are doing the Gotoes, or the Gotoes. Really strong, usually pre-promoted units that join at the very end of the game to ensure that you have a chance even if your team sucks. I would say that's probably the definition, but as you can see there's probably a couple in the list that don't really fit that. We're going to talk about that in depth. I've been really looking forward to this one, for one because, a lot of people requested it. It's not the most requested one, sure, but it is one that I think has been requested almost every video, at least once, probably multiple times. Another reason I'm looking forward to these is because you don't really get to talk about these units very much since they only appear so briefly in like playthroughs and let's plays. Like let's say I'm doing a playthrough of Blazing Blade, and I use like Kent throughout the game. I can talk about him like all game long and notice his like little flaws and like inconsistencies or things he's good at. These units are only around for like one chapter at most, generally, maybe a little bit more depending on them, depending on which one you want to talk about. But they don't really stick around, so all you end up saying about them generally is like, oh, they're so good, and then the game is over. So it's fun to talk about them in a little more depth. Now the first thing we need to get out of the way here is usually I do sort tier lists by availability a little bit, so that means that a character that's around for a lot of chapters is usually better than one that's around for very little chapters. And if I were to do this objectively with those standards, then I feel like almost none of these would cross, where's my cursor, there he is. Almost none of these would cross like the C tier, B tier maybe, because even though a lot of these are really strong, unfortunately they are not around for very long, and a character such as Marth, or I'm just saying something, or like Kent again, I usually like to use the word brownie points for this. That's around brownie points. A character that's around all game gets a lot of brownie points because every chapter they're there contributing and helping out and doing stuff for you, whereas these guys, they're just not around. Their added value for you in those chapters is 0. But for these characters, yeah, that's really not very fair for them. So I'm still gonna count good availability in their favor. Like if a character, one of these is like around for more than like one chapter, I'm gonna be like, oh, that's pretty damn good, because that means they get to help out for more. But I'm not gonna like put them like really low because they're not around very much, basically. I'm gonna like, if they're around for more often, I'm gonna let it help them, but I'm not gonna say, well, he's not around for very much, so yeah, you go in C tier, you go in C tier. Like, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. These might end up in C tier, but you get the point, right? I'm not gonna be like, all right, none of these are even like above C tier, because that wouldn't be very fair. And yeah, I think it's more fun to like hype up units a little bit and be like, okay, they're so good, let's put them in S tier. Like, oh my god, so strong. So, the original Gotoh. Unfortunately, I haven't finished FE1 or FE3 Book 1, so I haven't really played with the original very much, but I do know a couple things about them. Unfortunately, what I didn't realize at the time is that Gotoh is actually just not in FE3 Book 1. As I said, I never finished the game. So yeah, you can take his rating as his FE1 rating, since he just wasn't in FE3. I don't know why, they just deleted him, just like Riz and Roger and all these other iconic characters. Shucks. I do know that like Gotoh, when he joins, he's like the only unit you get that can use Swarm, so that's pretty cool. And if you want in particular, enemies don't have resistance, like none at all. And of course, generally enemies have very low resistance. It helps a lot for the original Gotohs that the games didn't really have a high difficulty setting, so the enemies are generally really easy. From what I know about Gotoh, I think his HP is like in the high 30s or 40s, around that much. Defense is pretty high, especially considering he's a sage at like 13. Or 14, and then his magic I believe is capped, so he can do some solid damage. He can double the things in there. He does pretty well. So I would say the original pretty much does what he does best. I feel like like around here somewhere, probably maybe here, but I'm gonna put this one here for like FE1 and FE3 Book 1, because again, it doesn't have a separate sprite for those. The original Gotoh. Now I will judge these, like I have two really important criteria for these. One of these is to see like how they perform against, these final chapter enemies in general, or like how much they help against those enemies, how much better they are than your team, or if they're good at all. And the other one is how well they perform against the final boss, which is something I don't use as criteria very much. Usually I'm like, well, I don't know, Luna Canas does like pretty good against the final boss compared to most characters, but the final boss is only one enemy, so who cares? But in this case, for these units, the final boss, well, for one, it's probably for a lot of them, it's the only boss they ever get to fight, so it's like a pretty significant enemy. And for two, it's like the purpose of the archetype almost is to give you a chance to get the final boss. Sometimes it depends on the character. Sometimes you have to use your lord instead. But there are characters that are like basically fail-safes against the final boss, just to make sure you're not like soft locked because of too high stats on the boss. So that's something I'm going to wait in. I know Medius has like 0 resistance in pretty much every game. Or at least in like FE1, I know he has 0 resistance. So Gotoh could help out there in theory. But I also know that like in Shadow Dragon, for example, where this Gotoh is from, Medius is way too fast and he actually has a resistance stat, and there's like no Lunatome or anything. So Gotoh is actually pretty damn shit in Shadow Dragon when you think about it that way. And also, I almost never recruit Gotoh in Shadow Dragon because I tend to get Nagi, who is right here. Nagi is an FE11 invention as she came back for FE12. But in FE11, you kind of choose between Gotoh and Nagi. You either don't get 24x the Gaiden chapter, which you get by not getting Falcon or Tiki. So then the game is like, oh shit, you're going to be fucked against Medius, so let me give you Nagi instead. But if you get Nagi, then you don't get Gotoh, even though I'm pretty sure he like has dialogue with Marth, but he just doesn't help you for some weird reason. The nice thing about Gotoh that I didn't mention before, that's pretty relevant for Shadow Dragon Incarnation, is he can warp. That's pretty damn helpful in the fact that he can warp. Because that's one of the easiest way to clear the chapter in Heart 5, is you just warp a Maneki to the boss. Generally, Tiki or Nagi won't kill Medius unless they crit. They probably have a higher chance of missing than critting though. And then Medius just one-rounds them because Heart 5 Medius is ridiculous like that. Then you revive them with the Arm Staff using Athos, and then you try again. You warp him in again. It's like, hey, you failed last time, but you know, let's just have another go. And Gotoh can be one of the people that warps, so that's pretty nice. I have looked at the Heart 5 enemy stats, and Gotoh doesn't really do very well against Heart 5 enemies. He can like double, I think he can double like ballistas, bishops, and generals. And his defense is like okay, but enemies in the final chapter are really goddamn strong. So he can actually do, like, he will help. Just staff utility alone is still very helpful in the final chapter. But he's not just like a failsafe. Like, and that sounds like I have really high standards for the guy, and I do, because some of these guys are absolute monsters. I'm still gonna put Gotoh in the same tier. I do think the OG does better generally because he's, you know, he doesn't have to face enemies that are as tough, and I don't want to judge him by like Heart 5 alone. But that is kind of a knock on him, and also the thing that like I don't really like to like penalize characters for preventing you from getting another one too much, but at the same time it does kind of sting that you don't get Nagi if you have Gotoh. But you know, at least you might have Tiki, you know, instead, which is basically functionally the same thing against Medius. So who knows? The reason these are so important against Medius, by the way, is because Marth on Heart 5, he cannot really face Medius. He has 25 speed cap. Medius is like 30 speed, so Marth will always get doubled and dies. There's no way to boost his speed beyond the cap, unlike in New Mystery where you actually can. And Gotoh is not a New Mystery, by the way. He's not in FE3 Book 2. He just doesn't join you, ever, weirdly enough. I guess while we're talking about these, we might as well talk about Nagi, because I just brought up all the Medius stuff. I feel that Nagi doesn't really do too well against Final Chapter enemies either in Shadow Dragon. Like, her speed is kind of low, so a lot of enemies can double her. The Dragonstone does not boost her speed. This is a problem that Manekiths oftentimes have, where they have like a Dragonstone that gives them like a lot of strength and defense and resistance, but it doesn't boost their speed. Probably because someone brought this up on my stream at one point that I really liked. They don't want them to double and run at the Manekiths stone uses. That's pretty funny. That's a pretty clever way of describing it, yeah. I do like that Nagi is like one of the few units that can kill the final boss. That's definitely like, that helps her able to like beat the... That's the purpose of a Gotoh, right? To help you beat the final boss. So I'm gonna put her here for that. The FE12 one is... I don't remember how effective she is against Medius, actually. I don't remember that. It's really not cool that pretty much all the Gotohs I could put on this list are from games that I've played the least. Like, you can see there's like no GBA FE on here, for example. But this Nagi, I do really like still, because in FE12, you face so many dragon enemies. That's another kind of knock on Gotoh, by the way. There's some mage dragons that he just cannot hurt, period, and those are really annoying for him. But yeah, this one is, I would say, like, I don't know, you guys probably can't tell the difference anyway between these two, right? I mean, I can't anymore, so I'm just gonna put them like around the same place. But there's a lot of enemy dragons in FE12 that you want to take care of, and Nagi does a ton of damage, because she's effective against the fire dragons, ice dragons, flying dragons, any dragons you face, really. There's a ton of those in the last few maps of FE12, in the last final big chapter. My dimensions are getting messed up, so let me fix that real quick. Alright, so next on the list I have Mison from Gaiden and Echoes. And I have actually played Gaiden like 3 times, and I've finished Echoes once, but it's been a while. Mison, his stats are actually only slightly better than Zeke. Like, the difference is significant, but he's actually slower than Zeke, funnily enough, but he's a bit stronger. They're both Gold Knights. and Zeke just joined a bit before, so he's not like that far above your other comrades, and he's definitely useless against the final boss, so that alone is a big knock on him. The fact that he can't really do much against the final boss of that game. I think it goes without saying that this video will be full of spoilers, but hopefully if you're watching this, then you know what you're in for, because Gotoes are literally like final chapter playable characters, so I'm going to talk a lot about the details there, so I'm sure you guys figured this out. So, yeah, Mison, I know that he can use the Gotoes, but I'm pretty sure that in both Gaiden and Echoes, anyone who can use the Gotoes, so that's not really like something in his favor in my opinion. That doesn't mean that he doesn't use it well, but I'm just saying like you don't need him in order to be able to use the Gotoes. It is nice to have 1-2 range, I will say that much. It is pretty nice, but I don't think he's like particularly great. And don't get me wrong, his strength is really good, and I believe he's like very physically bulky. He's got some good HP and good defense. I looked up stats in advance, but it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how great he is against enemies when you haven't played it in a while. I liked him, but he's not like super good or anything. He was alright. He was okay, but I felt like he was mortal for sure. But he was pretty good. He's like, I wish I could be more descriptive of this guy. Gold Knight is a pretty good class. It has high mobility, and you know, in Gaiden and Echoes you pretty much either double or you get doubled, because the doubling threshold is only 1, so he will always be borderline getting doubled or doubling something. I don't remember him doubling a whole lot when I played, which was unfortunate, because I would really like to use that massive like power of his twice, but unfortunately tends to be not an option. But the final chapter in Gaiden, the part where you have him, is pretty long. It's like the entirety of, I believe it's called like part 4 or part 5 in that. He does have a lot of utility time, but at the same time, he never really stood out to me as much as the others did. That's why I'm putting him like a tier below. And also because he's not really that effective against, like, even getting to Duma with him is pretty damn difficult, because the map is a swamp map. You can't really move very far in that. In Echoes, you can reclass into other things. You don't really have that option in Gaiden, unless you want to do like... let me think. No, wait, you need to be a Dread Fighter to do the loop in that game. And I'm pretty sure you can't go to Dread Fighter in the original Gaiden, but you can do silly things like that in Echoes if you like grind a lot. But, you know, once you get to the part where he joins, I don't think you want to grind a lot. I think you just want to finish the game. So, these 4 are all going to come at once. These are the bishops that join you in the final chapter of Fe3, Book 2, as well as New Mystery. So it's Alice, Nina, Lena, and Maria. And I could have put them on here twice because they also have new mystery sprites, but they're pretty much the same in all their incarnations. In fact, all 4 of these are basically the same unit, so we're going to be clearing through these a lot faster than I initially thought. If I remember correctly, she has A staves, she has A staves, she has B staves, and she has C staves. Why is this relevant? Because staff using is pretty much all they can do. They join, like, the way the final chapter works in that game is they stand around Medius, and you can either recruit them with specific characters to like talk to them and snap them out of their hypnosis, or you can kill them as enemies, which is pretty easy because their HP and defense are shit. But you gotta kill them or recruit them, because if you don't get them out of the way, then Medius is gonna eat them to survive, to like revive himself. So what you want to do is generally recruit them all, and then you can use them as staff utility, because as I said, their staff ranks are pretty high. We got 1 A rank, 2 A ranks, 1 B rank, and 1 C rank, respectively. And they can use like the rescue staff, which is E rank, at least it is a new mystery. And Fortify can be used by A rank staff users like Alice and Nina if you want to like heal your units, because you got to fight a bunch of dragons on your way there. Again, staff is pretty good. It's B rank, so that can be used to make Marth move again to attack Medius another time, or help one of your other characters get to Medius on turn 1. They're pretty helpful actually if you want to kill Medius on like the very first turn or the second turn. Turn 2 is a little easier if you're like okay with surviving a couple dragons. So they can be helpful, but they're very terrible at combat, and they're not ever going to kill Medius unless you do something ridiculous. I did see a video once, I'm pretty sure it was Maria who actually killed Medius with like the Super Force Thoron Tome, but that is exceptional. That was on Lunatic, but that guy was a madman. That is never going to happen in a normal playthrough. So, because they joined so late, like they literally joined the turn before you finish, pretty much. Because they joined so late, I can't really like... They have no availability points to them, basically, and they're only going to help with like staff utility, which is nice. So I'm still going to put them like around here somewhere. They're nice, but I feel like compared to all these other Gotoes, they really leave something to be desired. In fact, you could argue that these are not Gotoes at all. I'm only putting them in here because of the late join time. Because really, when you think about it, they're not combat units. They're just staff utility units. They could have like almost any stats they wanted, and they'd be about equally useful. but they're not going to be useful for fighting, and I do like my Gotoes to be able to fight. So I'm going to put them in D tier when it comes to Gotoing. For it, like, if they joined a lot earlier, then the staff utility alone would be pretty nice. At the same time, though, in Fe12 and to a lesser extent in Fe3, if you're like any kind of staff user early on, you can just get your staff ranked to wherever you need them to be. So it wouldn't even be that special. But the point is, these are not, you know, the world-defying combat units that we've come to expect from Gotoes. Now, next we have the Fe5 Trio, Sias, Sed, or Seti, if you use the Ultimate Translation patch, and Galzus. I think these are, at least these two are pretty uncontroversially Gotoes, especially this guy over here. So, Sias, you have to choose between him and Seti, and a lot of people hold that against Sias, but I think on his own, in a vacuum, he's actually pretty good. And I don't really like penalizing units for depriving you of another unit. A lot of people do that, but I personally do not. So those are my standards. Again, if you have different standards, that's okay, but this is my tier list, and you're free to disagree in the comments. Keep it simple, though. Anyway, Sias, he has a lot of leadership stars. When he's like an enemy, he has 10. He tones it down a little bit. I think it goes down to about 5 or 4 in his joining chapter, and it goes down even further in the final chapter, or in the chapters after that. He has like 24, 24x in the final chapter. So there's actually 3 chapters where you can use him. Another one for his like actual joining chapter, I guess. So that's 4 chapters, pretty much. That's quite a lot of, you know, brownie points for a Gotoh user, for a Gotoh. So that's pretty cool. So I do like him, and I think he's actually, like, for most people I would advise picking Seti because he's easier to use. They both have A staves, and Seti's combat is much better because of whole Seti. But Sias on his own has A staves, and anyone with A staves in Fe5 is an automatic god because the ability to warp, rewarp, rescue, restore, fortify, magic up, all those utility stabs are so good that you can't really put anyone, you could never put him below A rank for that alone, because it's just that good, even though he joins that late. In his combat, it's okay. His magic is like almost capped. It's like base 17 or 18 or 19 or something. It's really high. So if you give him a magic up boost, he can actually like get something done against enemy dark mages, even if they're like on magic boosting floors. Which is very helpful, being able to like use silence or sleep. Those are also some really good stats that you can use. So honestly, I kind of feel like putting him here because he's just that helpful with his stat use. He's not a combat god though. Like, he can use lightning, he can do some fair damage with it, but he's probably not going to kill a whole lot with it. But then of course there's Seti. There's always going to be like, you know, one better than the other. And I think Seti is like pretty fair to put over here. I think Seti has to be among the best combat units that Fire Emblem has ever seen in both Fe4 and Fe5. As long as he has whole Seti, he is Seti, he is Set, he is overpowered, he kills everything. For Seti, it has really high mites. I don't think it's 30 in Fe5, I believe it's about 20. But it doesn't matter because it's 2 with KOs everything anyway. He is Adept, he has a really high pursuit critical, so he'll almost always crit on the second hit. He had some resistance. 1 to range, did I mention that? He counters everything. He's super dodgy because of the speed bonus. Avoid for him, like, hit rates cap at 99 and they floor at 1, so he'll never be completely invincible, but he might as well be. He's one of the best characters to take on enemy dark mages, despite the weapon triangle disadvantage of 5%, because he's just that dodgy. You can use magic floors that are both present at 24x and in the final chapter to be basically invincible. He still has A staff, so he can still do all those things I named for Sias, like sleep, warp, rewarp, rescue, magic up, which is basically barrier, by the way. So all those things are just too good. So the combination of having some semblance of availability and the ability to kill almost everything and have staff utility and then some leadership stars as well, I think that puts him at the top by far right now. Don't get me wrong, Galzus is also a combat god. He joins like a couple turns after Set and Sias, basically. Like, they join at the end of 24 or 23. They join at the end of 23, and Galzus joins somewhere during 24. So a couple turns depending on how you go about it. But once you talk to him with Merida, you kind of figure out just how good this guy is. But he's already been chasing you down for the whole game, appearing on turn 15 or turn 69 and just kicking your butt all over the place. The weapons that he comes with are pretty much the best weapon you could ask for. The Master Axe especially. 1 to range, once again, it's brave. He has Astra and Luna, so he'll always attack twice and then proc something generally because his skill is capped, is like 20. So 20% to activate something every time he attacks. He can kill Raedric even though, you know, he's supposed to be killed by someone with a Blackie sword. Because, you know, that one negates his Lop tier ability. But you know, Galzus doesn't care. As long as he activates Luna or uses like an Armor Slayer to be effective, he's going to get the job done. He's less versatile than these, but his combat is still so good that I'm going to put him up here anyway. I will say Galzus should probably be benched for 24X, the chapter where you rescue Avel, because that one, it really doesn't work very well to have him here. He can be good at combat if you're taking it slow, but generally for 24X I like to deploy only staff users with high magic, or at least medium magic, to be able to rewarp around, rescue people. Galzus is pretty vulnerable to Dark Mages, because his magic stat is like his weak point. He might not get attacked because he does counterattack with the Master Axe if you're using him on him, and he can use the Fire Sword to get a little bit of extra magic, and his HP buffer is really good. He has like, I think it's like capped HP, it's really high. So he can do fine, he can do okay, but I generally bench him there in favor of, you know, staff users. So usually for me, he only has utility in his joining chapter and in the final chapter, but he can be alright in 24X, especially if you're taking it slower, if you're walking your way to the final room. But I generally recommend you just abuse rewarp and rescue, get the job done that way. It's much faster and much less painful. I know what you're doing over here, Gifka, but it's not your turn yet. I'm gonna move you like where you belong, which is around here somewhere, I believe. Is that right? Oh, this should be alright. But first I want to do Fe6 Correll. Now, if you have watched my Fe6 Let's Play, the latest one, you'll know it's reverse recruitment and Correll joined first, because, you know, they reversed the recruitment order. That's the whole concept. But this is the original Correll. This is the vanilla Correll. And that one joins in a village in chapter 23, which is one chapter before 24, which is basically the final chapter of the game. Because the actual final chapter is basically like one turn of going up to Idun and hitting her with Roy and then saying GG. Correll, I think, is one of the worst ones of this list by far, I think. He's like, the big problem for me with Correll personally is I really love that secret shop that sells you boots. So in 21X or in 21, I like to send a flyer to the secret shop, buy as many boots as I can, and then use as many as they can over the course of like that chapter and the next one and the next one. And by the time I get to Correll, pretty much all of my team that I'm using has at least 10 move, and preferably like 14 or 15, depending on how many you've used. Even if I'm using an Armor Knight, I'm going to give him the boots, because having 50 move is so nice that it makes the final chapters so much less painful. Like even just having a 14 move Dancer or 14 move Roy makes seizing all those thrones a lot quicker. But Correll has no chance to use those boots, so in order for him to have the same movement as those, he would have to, you would have to save like 4 pairs of boots or 5 pairs of boots for him in the convoy, leaving them unused, which is such a huge waste, and then give them to him one by one in that chapter. That alone is pretty annoying. So usually he will have much less movement than your characters, unless you save boots for him. But I'd rather use those on my characters. I usually have enough characters, like I usually have more characters that need boots than I have boots, basically. So it's kind of hard to just justify saving boots for him, and I think that's a big knock on him. And also his combat isn't like that special. It does help that he comes with S-rank swords and generally high bases. Funnily enough, I haven't really talked about his growth at all, even though there's like the most spectacular part about him. The whole gimmick of Correll is that he joins at level 19, and then if you level him up, he gets like higher base stats, or he gets higher stats. He gets like plus 3 HP and like plus 2 in every other stat if he gets like lucky. These growths actually aren't that high beyond 100%, so I've always said that in vanilla Fe6, if Correll were to join with 1 higher in all of his base stats, and he reduced all of his growth by 100%, he'd actually be a better unit. But no one would give a fuck about him, because there's nothing entertaining about that. What's entertaining about him is you level him from 90 to 20 and he gets like a huge level up, which is fun. But it's not really very purposeful. Also, I've done it before. I've trained him from 19 to 20 in the final chapter, or actually in the chapter before that, and it actually takes a pretty long time to get him there, because he doesn't really gain a whole lot of XP. I mean, the guy's 1 level from capping, so he gets jack squat for XP. It really sucks. So even training him to get there is kind of annoying, so I think that shows. And he doesn't really have any good 1-2 range. You can kind of forgive someone for that in Fe6, but it'd be nice if you had some kind of niche to him in the final chapter. But really all we can do is use the Randall on things, which you probably have someone for already, so it's not like he's adding very much that you don't have already. It'd be something else if you had like a personal weapon that he could use, like a dragon slaying weapon. You can use Worm Slayers, but I'm not sure if he won rounds with those against Harpoon Parakeets. He might normal mode ones. He's definitely going to need a crit to avoid a counter. That's another thing, he's always getting counterattacked if he's not one-hit KOing. And I'm pretty sure one-hit KOing is pretty damn hard. Like, I'm not talking 1 round, but 1 hit, so he doesn't get countered. That's pretty hard, because I'm pretty sure he doesn't take 2 hits, so you'd have to heal him every time. Whereas someone like, I don't know, if you have like Shin, for example, he can hit him from range. That could be a good niche for him. But overall, I don't think he's really good. I generally put him around here somewhere, below Mison. I think he's less useful than Mison. I actually like these better overall. than him. But, you know, it feels weird to do this because he is available for a longer time than these are. And Correll's also pretty bad against the final boss too, I guess. Maybe I should put him around here. He's really fucking bad in a way. But it feels so weird to have this, right? Like the sword staying below these 4 helpless little bishops that are barely worth recruiting. It feels very weird, I gotta say. In my initial draft, I had him up here, just so you know. Rating these units is always going to be very weird. Then we have Enna and Nazir. You might not agree that these are Gotoes, and I'm inclined to agree. I think we're overrepresenting Tellius, you know, slightly here already. But the reason I want to put them here is because I feel like they're better fail-safes than the Laguz Royals against Ashnard in FE9. The way these work, if you don't know, is if you beat Ike, or if you have Ike beat the Black Knight. I'm very bad at speaking today, holy crap. If you have Ike beat the Black Knight, then you get Nazir. But if your Ike loses against the Black Knight, you get Enna instead. But either way, these will probably the only units you have besides Ike that can fight Ashnard. So I think the idea behind these is, and especially Enna, I think the idea is like, if your Ike is not strong enough, you have a unit that can hurt Ashnard. But at base, they don't really do a very good job of beating Ashnard. You have to train him up a little bit, or give him like Resolve or Wrath or some combination of that. Then they can do okay against Ashnard. But whatever you do, it will end up being like risky, and like you have to plan a little bit. But the reason like they're relevant and these are, in my opinion, less relevant for that is in hard mode, the Laguz Royal, you can pick like one for the final battle to help you against Ashnard, but in hard mode, he only comes after Ashnard's initial transformation. So you have like his first form, and then after that you can pick. In normal mode, you get these guys for the entire final battle in FE9. But in hard mode, you need these to hurt Ashnard if your Ike is really shit. So I feel like these are better fail-safes, and I do think the fail-safe part is a pretty big part of what makes Gotoes Gotoes. So that's why I'm putting him on here, and also because, you know, I need more units. I mean, this guy's on here, can you tell I'm desperate for putting more units on this list? So that's why I have these here. I don't think they're very good though. I think besides the failsafe, they don't really have very much. Laguz only have 1 range in that game, even if they're dragons. I like the Radiant Dawn versions better, where they have 1-2 range. It feels very fitting. We have a dragon breath, you know. They don't breathe fire, they breathe like ice or whatever, but it'd still be pretty cool. And I don't think their combat is all that great. They have like really high HP buffers, if I remember correctly, but their other stats aren't as spectacular. So for the failsafe part, like in theory, I feel like the dimensions are getting fucked up again. Of course they are. I really need to find a way around this. There we are. So I really feel like Enna is better than Nazir. Nazir's stats are actually better because he's supposed to be a reward for, you know, having your Ike beat the Black Knight. But the thing is, if you beat the Black Knight, then your Ike is so strong you don't need Nazir for anything to beat Ashnard. Now, I don't normally like to use the term need for something because I think that's a pretty... Like, I don't think it's very significant. Like, generally in Fire Emblem, you don't really need anything, period. But the thing is, because this is like the unit's only purpose is to fight Ashnard, and because they're fairly mediocre against other enemies, I think it's fair to say that Nazir's better stats than Enna don't really warrant putting him over her. Because in situations where you get Enna, she will be more useful to you than in situations where you get Nazir. Because if you get Nazir, your Ike is probably strong enough to take on Ashnard as well as the Black Knight. So what do you need Nazir for? That's my reasoning for the ordering. I could see myself moving them down maybe, but I think that the failsafe thing against hard mode Ashnard's first form is worth a couple more points than this. Even though I still like the staff utility thinking about it. So this is the tier list that I'm like most shaky on so far, but it's interesting to think about. So then we have all these Laguz Royals. I put them in both games here because they both appear pretty much the same time in both games, like before the final chapter. Of course, the FE9 versions, I just explained how they worked. In normal mode, you get them from the start of the final chapter. Hard mode, you get them after Ashnard's initial transformation. And, you know, that makes them good fail-safes for the second form, but doesn't really help for the first form. And they look pretty good in the final chapter. They have, you know, Laguz normally in FE9, they have like a transformation gauge. And when it runs out, you're kind of shit out of luck, you can't attack. You can just shove people and like look pretty. Or look badass in the case of these guys. But in FE9 they get the Laguz band, what's it called? It's like the full band or something. It's basically a band that always lets them stay transformed, and you don't really get to trade it off them, I believe. So they're just kind of stuck with it, and it's pretty damn good. Keeps them transformed for the whole thing. They only have 1 range, but their stats are pretty good. I think this guy, Gifka, is by far the strongest. He does the most damage per hit, and they all double fairly reliably. I don't remember if Gifka always doubles Ashnard. but regardless of anything, I think he does the most damage against Ashnard. But Tabarn is next, and then Nasala is next. One thing that annoys me about Tabarn and Nasala in this game is even though they're flyers, they don't have Kanto in that game, so they're just kind of stuck of where they attack, which is kind of annoying when you consider that FE9 mount units all have like a super good version of Kanto, but hey, it can't be helped. So as fail-safes, I like these, but as units, they're better than these. But I think going by hard mode, they really have less utility than the others. So I'm gonna put them like around here somewhere. They should be in a row in my opinion. I don't think anyone should go in between them. But they're nice against Ashnard's final form in hard mode. Although if your Ike is good, there's really no point to use. And the thing is, though, thinking about it a little more, because if you get past Ashnard's first form, chances are you can probably get past the second form anyway. So what the fuck do you need these for in hard mode? So if I'm going by hard mode standards, maybe they should be a little lower. Because really, what are you going to use them for ever, basically? What's going to be the point of them? Yeah, they're really not that great, actually, when you think about it like that. There you go. Because look, by the time you get to Ashnard's second transformation, you've probably cleared like almost the entire map, so there's only one enemy left to fight, and that's Ashnard. You've already proven that you have something to handle Ashnard. Either you've made your Anna really good, or you have a good Ike. So what do you need these guys for, right? They seem pretty bad. If you're not going to use them, though, I will say you should always pick Gifka if you're going to do transfers to Radiant Dawn, because then you can get a strength transfer and have a stronger Gifka in that game. Speaking of that game, they appear here too, and there's like 5 of these now. So the way they work on Radiant Dawn, which I think makes these very spectacular, is you actually get them before the final chapter. And in Nyla's case, you get her way before the final chapter. You get Nyla in part 1 for 2 chapters. It's only 2 chapters, but then in part 4, you also get her for 2 chapters. So for a Gotoh, this is insane availability. She's around when you're running around with like tier 1 scrubs. Like, imagine playing Fe7 Limb mode, and for 2 chapters, instead of like Wallace, you get freaking Athos for 2 chapters. Then he disappears. Then he reappears, but just for victory or death. That's basically Nyla. She's that fucking strong. Now, I'm not going to say you need her, but she is so strong. Like, the Laguz Royals in FE10, there's no way to describe how good they are at combat. Their only flaw is their lack of 1 range, generally, and then Gifka not having Form Shift. But Form Shift is basically their version of the Laguz band of FE9, where they stay transformed all the time, but instead this is a skill now. So, they have super high attack. They will 1-hit KO a lot of enemy types, and they will 2-hit KO generals, which are super tanky. Not always, but generally. You have SS Strike for really high might. Nasala and Tabarn, they have Kanto. They are super fast. They will double everything. Tabarn doubles auras at base. Nasala does that too. It's stupid. Gifka can get to doubling auras if he wanted to. Knigas, low chance, but he can also get there. Knigas and Gifka can 1-round KO auras, like the final boss, basically, with just their freaking claws or fangs or whatever. It's stupidly strong. Their might is insane. But then Nyla is like around so much that honestly, I want to put her here. Because a Gotoh, like, I think we can still think of her as a Gotoh because she's that strong. Like, even though she's the weakest of the Laguz Royal stat-wise, she's still so unbearably strong, and we're going to put her over here. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting all the Laguz Royals on a Gotoh tier list. So, Nyla is insanely powerful. And she overkills part 1 enemies by so much it's not even funny. She like 1-hit KOs everything and then doubles them, and then like even that is like overkill. Like, if she were to attack, like, I think if you leave her untransformed, she can still somewhat perform admirably in part 1. It's insane how good she is there. Her high movement is really nice. You can give her pass if you want, if you're willing to sacrifice it until part 4 to get through every enemy. Or you can just, you know, not do it, but she's still like really helpful for catching the thieves in the final chapter of part 1. And there's just no other way to describe this. She is freaking insane. One of the best units that ever. Like, if you look at single chapter performances, this is one of the best units ever. And honestly, in a tier list with availability this low, is like 1 chapter of performance is already like a huge difference, right? Lots of brownie points, basically. So Gifka's only around in the tower. I'm going to put him aside for a moment because Tabarn and Nasala, they don't join in like part 1 or anything, but they are around for part 4 before the tower, which I think I also want to give them a lot of points for. That's really nice of them to like be able to kill in part 4, because what happens in part 4 is your army gets split up across 3, and no matter how many units you trained, 1 route will probably be short of good fighting units, because you know you got your Dawn Brigade, but they're generally pretty underleveled. You will have like 1 or 2 good units in that, and then you have like the Grow Mercenaries. They will have like a couple more units, but splitting them across 3 teams, it's pretty straining. So every little bit of extra combat in part 4 really helps, and Tabarn and Nisala, of course, bring the best possible combat you could in those. Like, one-range monsters that just kill everything. Especially Nisala, who just... He's in the desert in one chapter, where you have even fewer options than you usually would. So, who's he really competing with? Like, sure, Hara and Jill are pretty good, but other than that, I think he's easily your best unit. So, and then Tabarn is usually the route that I kind of don't put that many good units in. And I think the same goes for most people. I think people put, like, Tabarn squad, they usually put people they want to train, because they like training them in 4-5, where you have to, like, route the Lagoos. You have to kill Izuka, but most people, like, use it to train their people, because there's a bunch of, like, respawning Lagoos that you can kill over and over in the swamp. So that's where people said, like, the shitty units. So having Tabarn to babysit them is really nice, too. I don't know if they're, like, the same tier as these guys, though. Their lack of 1-2 range can be a bit annoying in part 4, because it's, like, all route. But at the same time, they're just so strong, I can't help myself. I'm going to put them in here somewhere. I would actually say it's about this, I think. It's roughly right. Something like this, I think, is fair. I do think Seti is like a fair step above Tabarn and Nisala. Like, just because of the 1-2 range and the staff utility, that's really good. And like Sias and Galzus, they're both... Like, this guy is more like stabs and this guy is more like combat, but they don't really have both. So I think that gives him a significant edge in this case. I will say, like... I do think it's really close between these two. I will say that. This is all very close together. But this is the way that I feel is right. Now, Kanikas and Gifka are more like traditional Gotoes in a sense that they only join for the final chapter. And they're like super powerful in there. They have enough attack to 2 with KO generals, which these guys can reach, but it's kind of hard. Nasala especially will generally just rely on like activating his mastery skill. And Tabarn can get there if he gets lucky with strength level ups in normal mode, I think. But generally, he will need a tier as well. Tear, yeah. I remember in the Reading Down Let's Play, me and Max were like, every time Nisala activated Tear. Because we're really funny like that. But yeah, Kanigas and Gifka have enough attack to kill generals sometimes. It's just stupid. The main difference is Kanigas has better strength, Gifka has better speed. It's like a 1 point untransformed, so 2 points transformed. Because Lagoon stats get doubled when it transforms. So it's not very huge. But if you transfer Gifka from Path of Radiance, like I talked about earlier, then he can have higher strength. And the fun thing is, if you have a lot of BXP lying around, which is especially relevant in like lower difficulties, where you get a lot more BXP and it's more useful, because it does more. Like, in hard mode, not only is BXP less available because you get less of it, but it's also less effective because it takes more BXP to level someone up. It's crazy. You basically get 4 times as little. So in hard modes, it's not as relevant, but in normal modes, in easier difficulties, if you have a capped strength Gifka, then you can give him BXP, and that will generally force a speed level up. And if Gifka gets to 20 speed, he has 40 speed transform, he will be able to double auras, which is a pretty big benchmark for him. Because if you can double auras without the help of like Nazir, Fe10 Nazir boosts your speed by 5 points. So if you stand next to him. So without that, Gifka can go up to an aura that's not on a corner tile and just one round it straight up, because the ones that are on the corners, they will have plus defense. They will have plus 10 defense, I think. Whereas the ones in the middle, they're on like war tiles, so they don't give defense. And he won't be able to one round those. I guess he could, if you gave him parity. Then he could do that as well. So that's really, really sick utility on their part. So I think for Gotoes, they are like as good as they come, I feel like. They're like as good as they come for final chapters. I think all these are a significant step worse at, you know, fighting in the final chapter. Like, these are serviceable, but they're not as great as your other units. These units outperform your units by a mile. And the only thing that's holding them back in this tier list is the fact that they're not available for more chapters like these are. That's the kind of divide that I'm happy with, I think. So that's the way I've got them sorted now. Last we have, and you've probably been wondering who the hell this guy is if you haven't played it. This guy is Gary from The Last Promise. It's not an official Fire Emblem game, but it's by far the most well-known ROM hack of Fire Emblem. And I decided to include it just for fun. But yeah, Gary, he is a warrior that joins, not exactly in the final chapter, but he's the last unit to join, I'm pretty sure. If not, then he's like close to it. I'm not entirely sure. I think Frederick and his daughter actually joined later than that, come to think of it. But I like to think of him as a Gotoh because he joins at a pretty damn high level, and his stats are pretty good. He doesn't like kill everything in the final chapter easily or anything, but he's pretty good for a late game joiner. And I thought it would be funny to like include another Last Promise shout out. You guys kind of liked the Siegfried one that I put in the Jagan tier list, so I thought it would be funny to put him here. He's not all that great. I would put him like around here somewhere, basically on availability alone. His stats, while serviceable, he's like high strength, high HP. And I think enough HP, enough speed to double, or almost enough, but not quite. But, excuse me. But I think he's alright. I think Gary can do some work. I don't even remember if he joins with S rank axes, but I think he does, which is pretty funny. But I'd have to look that up. But yeah, just play The Last Promise, guys. This is not a Last Promise advertisement at all. Trust. Alright, and about 40 minutes later, that's the whole tier list. All the Gotos, Gatos, whatever you want to call them. Looking back at it, it's really weird to tier these units because they're all across different games, even though, like, I got like 8 of them from like the Tellius games, and then like 3 from Thracia, and everything else is kind of like scattered around. There's like a bunch of Arcanea in there too. Really weird how some games they just decide not to give you a Goto at all. Like Fe4 generally doesn't really have one. 3 Houses doesn't really have one. Those games are like more growth based, I guess, in a way. And then, wait, hold up. Hold up. There was one big guy that I'm forgetting. There's one big guy that has to be put on here. Give me a second to get him, guys. How could I forget the official Athos? How did I reference Athos in my video but then forget about him? Wow, that's pretty insane. Don't worry, guys. I got this. I got this. Athos is here. Athos is also really good in the final chapter. I'm gonna put him like he's only around for final. I do think he stands out a bit more than these two in the final chapter because he is the best Luna user. Like, people hype up Canas about Luna, but really Athos is so much better at using it. He has 30 damage with it, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when these enemies in the final chapter have that much defense and resistance, you will love Luna. It's gonna crit like 1/4 or 1/3 at a time, and as long as Athos doesn't get one-rounded, which can happen to some enemies, depending on like how much speed he has, what difficulty you're playing. But if you give him like a body ring, he generally won't be getting doubled, except for like Linus and Lloyd. And he just... I don't think he two-shots enemies, because some of them will break the HP cap and have more than 60. But he does more damage than anyone else. He has the 1-2 range. He can use the Berserk Staff to Berserk Lloyd or Linus, which will let them kill each other, which makes them much easier. He can heal your units too if you want, if you can like Fortify. But I think generally you want Athos to fight every turn. You don't really want to use like Warp Staffs with him or anything. I generally don't end up doing that very much. But he can do it if you need him to. Like, you can use any tome, but there's really no point in using anything but Luna, and then maybe there's like 1 or 2 instances where you want to switch a weapon to get Weapon Triangle. Like that little room with all the magic users in it, with like Kenneth, and the Druid with Gespenst. Sometimes there's a reason to use like Aureola, but generally you want to use Luna. You want to use Luna against Minerval, you want to use it against the Fire Dragon. You want to just spam Luna all day, every day. And he does have some issues, like he can die if you manage him, but since the final chapter is generally cleared quicker depending on how you use Athos, there's really no reason not to throw every resource that you have at Athos within the chapter. So whether that means using Barrier on him, or using Linus Grace, or Philip's Might, all those things can help Athos survive and kill more often. And generally my final chapters just involves like rescue dropping Athos almost everywhere to get the kills. Because your next best units really aren't that good, and Fe7 doesn't give you anything like good S-rank weapons. They're like dropped by the enemies that you're supposed to fight with Athos. And even when you get them, they're not great. And if you're doing a ranked run, you don't even want to use those weapons very much, because they're so expensive. They cost bazillions to even use. You never want to drop them either. So you have to be very careful about them, actually. So you want to just save those weapons up. But even if you like had them from the start, you wouldn't use them because they're just so expensive. So Athos is really your main guy in the final chapter. Definitely the best guy against the final boss. And really, when you think about it, the best example on this list of what a Gotoh is supposed to do according to this tier list, which is, you know, help you in the final chapter in case your team sucks, because he can really carry you no matter your team, and make sure that you can beat the final boss and all the like things before it, because that's literally what Luna does, and Aureola and 4-Blaze can do it as well, of course. So, apologies for missing Athos. Somehow I forgot about him completely, even though I did like Correll. I don't think Fe8 really has a equivalent. Myrrh is there, but I talked about her in the Est video, so I don't think they really need to discuss her again right now. I don't think Myrrh is like on the same level as any of these guys, really. So I'm gonna leave her out for now. That's gonna be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, let me know what kind of tier list you want me to do, what kind of characters, archetypes, whatever. And I'll see you next time. Peace and goodbye.